So a word or two about our approach to early college high schools in North Carolina. We currently have 71 early colleges open in every corner of the state and have about 6 additional early colleges open this fall. These are schools that are typically located on the campus of a 2-year institution or a 4-year institution, and our target for these schools are first-generation students and students of high need. In the 5 years or 4 years of this experience, students are expected to earn both their high school diploma and 2 years of transferable college credit. These are very challenging environments for teachers because of the additional work required to accelerate students who often come into these schools unprepared for the rigors of this particular program. So they are supported and asked, certainly, to think about resource allocation decisions in very, very different non-traditional ways, including time and staffing and the acceptance of our common instructional framework. And we lead them through a fairly rigorous process of peer site review, where teachers in one early college are assisted in a study process of other early colleges, and that peer site review process is intended to look for evidence. Evidence of student engagement, evidence of effective teaching, and to create a very transparent and collaborative relationship among teachers who embrace that sort of transparency and mutual accountability across their schools. Easy to say those things, really very difficult to create that kind of culture over time, and that takes a great deal of work. And so our ability to help teachers and their administrators in this process is premised on a very integrated and sustained approach to professional development in and around these schools and their districts. I've already mentioned that we have 71 of these schools open around the state currently. There are 60 of them on our community college campuses, 5 of them on the university campuses, and we have an additional 6 schools that are in a community that lacks access to any college or university. And in those communities, we are piloting a virtual strategy where we are looking for ways to erect a college-going culture, to create a blended approach to learning whereby students will secure college credit through distance strategies. And so far, we're finding that these virtual pilots are producing very strong results, and I'm quite surprised because I resisted the concept personally and was opposed to the concept, and now I find myself eating the words that I issued 5 years ago. Not an uncommon practice for me. Lastly, the SERV Center, the Southeast Regional Lab, is doing an independent longitudinal study of our early colleges, and we really have been enjoying this work. The study has set up such that the students are randomly assigned into the early college, and the students who are randomly not assigned into the early college who have the same demographic profile are followed over time. So we have an excellent comparison between the sample of students and the students who are not being served in the early college model. And we're finding some pretty dramatic things out of this study and finding some things that are helping us improve our work in our professional development model. But we're finding that the students in early college high schools are significantly better in pursuing a course of study to lead them to college readiness and college success. So, for example, in Algebra 1 in 9th grade, 81% of the students in early college completed Algebra 1 in the 9th grade, compared to 67% of students who enrolled, the same students, by the way, who are enrolled in the conventional high school. That performance gaps have a different sort of flavor in early colleges compared to conventional schools. And in the early college high schools in the 9th grade with Algebra 1, there was a 2-point percentage gap between majority and non-majority students. And essentially in English, there was no gap present in those schools. Lastly, that in the early colleges, suspensions are cut dramatically by almost 90% compared to suspension rates in conventional schools, and we learn a lot from even those suspensions in those schools as we interview teachers and their administrators about what led to those very difficult decisions. So in your slide materials that were printed, there's additional information here and data if you wish, but the website, let me give you that if it's not in your materials. It's newschoolsproject.org, newschoolsproject.org, and schools is plural. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. And we can pull up that website, too, at the end of the session if you kind of want to see what that is before you head on out. So one of the slides Tony had, it talked about the components of the early college high schools, and one thing that popped out was high rigor. And so our next presenter, Elaine Allensworth, is going to talk a little bit about her research into rigorous coursework and some of the findings that have emerged from that research related to the supports students and teachers need.
Can you hear me? Okay. Right. I'm going to talk about the costs of rigor. There's this movement to get more rigor into the high school curriculum. Where everyone's concerned about low academic standards, and we recognize now that pretty much every student wants to get a four-year college degree these days. This is a big challenge, right? Because we've never even come close to graduating all students college ready. Not even half of students college ready as a nation. So we're going to have to really ramp things up, right? If we're going to improve college readiness and meet kids' expectations. In response, there's been an upping of graduation requirements in states and districts throughout the country. There's a lot of excitement around the Common Core standards. Pretty much everyone signed on to those. There's a movement to get more kids taking AP classes, honors classes. And, this makes sense, this strategy, because we do know that students who are in schools with stronger curricula tend to learn more. We tend to see more equity, that kids in higher tracks tend to perform better than students in lower tracks, and students with advanced coursework tend to do better in college. However, while this makes sense on the surface, I'm going to suggest to you that narrowly focusing on curriculum and thinking that curriculum is going to solve everything is not going to result in any more kids coming out of high school with higher achievement. And in fact, it could have the opposite results. And the problem is that all of... Yeah.
Can you go back and say that again?
Yeah. That if we just narrowly focus on curriculum and we think, okay, by getting more kids to take rigorous curriculum and increasing the rigor of our curriculum, we're going to get more kids prepared for college. If we just focus on the curriculum without looking at school climate, thinking about school climate, without thinking about the capacity of our teaching staff to do this, and without thinking about professional capacity and learning climate and just focusing on curriculum, not supporting teachers and students any more than we have in the past, the focus just on curriculum isn't going to do anything by itself. It's a first step, but there are costs to increasing rigor. Okay? And if you don't pay attention to these other things, that increase in rigor could actually have some negative consequences for students. Okay? The problem with all of the prior research on which this movement is based is that it's really not applicable to a universal mandate or to making kids and making schools change what they're doing. Students selecting into higher level classes are different than other kids. They tend to have better support from parents and teachers. They're more motivated. Schools that have figured out how to offer a rigorous curriculum to all classes tend to be qualitatively different than other schools in that they've worked to be able to do it with the kids that they have, right? And so you always have to think about issues of school, teacher, and student capacity. Now, Chicago has really been an early adopter of many popular strategies that are in play all over the country to increase curricular rigor. So way back in 1997, and my work is all based in Chicago, so everything I'm going to talk about is going to be talking about Chicago. Way back in 1997, Chicago Public Schools eliminated all remedial coursework in high school so that all students entered ninth grade taking Algebra 1, English 1, 3 years of science, 3 years of social studies, 2 years of foreign language. All students had to take a college prep curriculum. It used to be students would come into high school, they would take maybe 6 credits, maybe 5 credits, they'd take remedial math, remedial English. A lot of kids were not taking college prep curriculum. That ended in 1997. In 2003, Chicago recognized that a lot of students were not passing algebra in the 9th grade, were not doing well in English, were struggling in terms of their reading, so they then also required 2 periods of algebra and 2 periods of English for any student coming into high school with test scores below the national median. That's also a very popular strategy. And then in 2005, they recognized that the curriculum that was being used in a lot of schools was subpar. There were a lot of variation in curriculum. They felt like a lot of the classes weren't rigorous enough, and so they put a big investment in many schools into curricula in English, math, and science. This was sponsored by the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation. It was, they brought in outside vendors to develop very high-quality curricula aligned with the ACT, with formative assessments that were all aligned with curriculum coaches, professional development, to make sure that kids were actually getting quality instruction in their English, math, and science classes. Okay, none of these strategies had the results that were expected or hoped for. And I'm going to focus on the first two, and then I'll just briefly talk about the next two. Okay, start off just talking about ending remedial coursework. If we look at kids in 9th grade, once the policy was put into place that kids couldn't take remedial coursework, everyone started off taking Algebra 1 and English 1 in 9th grade. And if we look at what happened in, when this change happened, we end up with more students finishing 9th grade with credit in Algebra 1 at the end of 9th grade. Among kids, and I separate this in this, I'm going to look at kids coming into high school divided up by their incoming skills. Because you might think, okay, for kids with very low skills, it might be hard for them to do well in algebra. But for average skilled kids, maybe this was a good thing. They're actually going to be taking more rigorous classes. They should probably be able to handle this. So if we look at the kids coming into high school with the very lowest skills, and actually any of the kids coming in with below average skills, they actually were more likely to finish 9th grade with credit in Algebra 1 or higher. So we have 9%, 8 to 9% more students finishing. The reason it's not high, we actually saw big increases in taking Algebra 1, but of course about half the kids failed it. So what do we also see? Well, we also see that students entering high school with the lowest skills were more likely to fail 9th grade math now that they're taking algebra. Absence rates increased for everyone, especially the average skilled kids, who would have probably taken algebra in the absence of the policy. They're still taking algebra, but now they have more heterogeneous classes, right? So instead of having the higher achieving kids taking algebra, everyone's taking algebra. The higher achieving kids were slightly more likely to be absent. Grades went down, math grades went down for the lowest skilled kids, and there was no change in test scores for anyone. In English, more kids ended up finishing 9th grade with credit in English 1 rather than remedial English. And that's because a lot of students took remedial English in the absence of the policy. But students entering high school with the lowest skills were more likely to fail English in 9th grade. So failure rates went up. Absence rates went up for everyone, but especially the higher achieving students. Grades went down for the kids coming in with the lowest skills, and test scores did not improve, and even declined a little bit for kids with the highest skills. So really no improvements in 9th grade outcomes, even though now nobody is taking remedial math in 9th grade. And the kids coming in with the weakest skills are more likely to fail, have more Fs by the end of 9th grade. Now, raising the graduation requirement so that by the end of high school, everyone has to take 3 years of science, 3 years of lab science, 3 years of math through Algebra 2, 4 years of English. It did mean that more students who graduated had college preparatory coursework when they graduated. And if we look at science, science changed the most. Students only had to take one science class before they said everyone had to take a college prep curriculum. With this policy, everyone had to take 3 years of laboratory science. And if we look over time, we follow kids who entered high school, we see a big jump up with the policy of students who finished high school with 3 years of science, up from 25% to 48%. The reason it's not at 100% is because half the students don't finish high school, right? They drop out. Okay, so we see this big increase of students graduating with at least 3 credits in science, in laboratory science. Now here's the percentage. This red line is the percentage of students who finish high school with a B average in 3 credits of science. Big increase in students taking and getting credit in science, hardly any increase at all in students finishing high school with good grades in science, grades that actually indicate that they learned something. We did some other analyses to see, well, how much do kids learn if they get A's, B's, C's, and D's? Kids who get A's and B's tend to actually improve their science skills. Kids who get C's improve their science skills by a little bit. D's, no difference from getting an F. So more kids are taking science, more kids are passing science, they're not learning a whole lot more science. Graduation rates declined with the policy. So if you look across cohorts of kids who are entering CPS high schools, graduation rates had been improving. The policy came into play in the first cohort subject to the higher graduation rates. Graduation rates went down for that cohort. They continued to go down the next year, and then they started picking back up again. So it's like they were reset, and they've been improving since then. In college, four-year college-going rates went down. Now, if you look at the black line at the bottom, that's four-year college-going rates among all students who started Chicago high schools from 1994 to 2000. But we know that graduation rates went down a little bit. So if the next line, that blue line, solid blue line, is just looking at college-going rates among all high school graduates. Still, we see no improvement with the policy. We thought, well, but what about the kids who are most prepared, right? The kids who are graduating with at least a B average. And we also did the same thing with the kids entering high school with the highest skills. Now they're all taking college preparatory classes. They should be more likely to go to college. But those are the kids in the top line. It turns out the kids that entered high school the most prepared ended up being less likely to go to college after the policy. The kids who graduated with a B or better from high school, B average or better, were actually less likely to go to college after the policy than before the policy. Yeah, but I might not have it at the end. Okay. Oh, well, is it a clarifying question?
About that point about going to college. So right after high school versus any follow-up about years 2, 3, so forth.
Yeah, right. So this is within a year after graduating high school. And then we also looked at 2-year persistence in college, and that was unchanged. Okay. So not so much success there with getting more kids. Even though more kids are taking rigorous classes, we don't see any improvements in outcomes. We actually see decline in outcomes. If we look at other policies instituted later, there's this double-dose algebra policy. Meant kids are taking a lot more algebra, a lot more English. It worked in terms of math test scores, algebra test scores. Kids actually learned more algebra when they were taking 2 periods. There's a lot of investment in professional development. It actually worked for kids taking 2 periods and also students who only took 1 period of algebra, because what schools did is they split their algebra classes into single-period classes for kids with high skills, double-period classes for kids with low skills. Kids in the single-period classes now no longer had students with behavioral and attendance problems in their classes. Their classes actually got harder, and they learned more. The kids in the double-period classes had twice as much instructional time. Their teachers had professional development. Instruction improved a lot. The instruction was actually of surprisingly good quality in these classes, and they learned more. Kids learned more, test scores improved, gains improved, and fail rates went up. So kids learned more, but they were less likely to pass. So the policy was seen as a failure because it was put in place to try to improve algebra pass rates, but actually more kids failed. And then there was the IDS program, which was this investment in curriculum, big investment, big changes in what teachers were doing in classrooms. They reported much better professional development. We can see changes in pedagogical practices. Kids were actually doing more math in math classes. But classes became more disorderly. There was more decline in student behavior and no improvements in learning at all. Okay, this is all depressing. Okay, but we know why, and we can actually do something about it. So what we've done is to try to figure out what's going on. We actually have looked at the ways in which what happens in the classroom affects students' learning gains and their grades. And we've done this by analyzing teacher and student surveys of what's happening in classrooms. I'm not going to go on talk about this too much because I'm going to run out of time, but really looking at what's happening in classes, given who's in the class and teacher backgrounds, student backgrounds, what kind of class it is and everything. Okay, and we see that there's these 3 instructional elements that really kind of come into play together. The demands of the class, how hard the class is, students' behavior in the class, and the degree to which students are getting monitoring and support, right? So teachers know where the kids are, kids know where they stand, and they're getting help when they need it. Okay. What we find is that student behavior is a prerequisite for academic demand to affect student learning. There are a million different ways we can look at this. This is just one way. This is just dividing schools into the degree to which students have good behavior. They come to class prepared, they do their homework, they actually come on time. This is just one measure of academic demand, how much critical thinking is expected in assignments. If you look at the left in schools with really poor student behavior, it really doesn't matter how much demand there is in their assignments. Kids are making very low gains on the EPAS exam. It's only in those schools that have really high levels of student academic behavior that you see above average gains on the EPAS, and then rigor really matters, right? So in the schools where kids are actually doing their work, right, then when they're asked to do more, they actually learn more. It's one of those things, if kids aren't doing the work, it doesn't matter what you ask them to do, because they're not doing it, they're not going to learn. We see the same thing when we look at it in a different way with student surveys. Just to explain this, we look at the relationship between students' gains on the test, the Explore to Plan, 9th to 10th grade, and the Plan to ACT from 10th grade to 11th grade, and look at the elements of their classrooms. This is a classroom level analysis that controls for school effects and all kinds of things. And if we look at the challenge in the classroom, we see it's very strongly related to gains on the EPAS. If we look at the degree to which classrooms are orderly, also very strongly related to gains on the EPAS. That's what those plus signs are. But there's this interaction effect of challenge times order. So, well, first of all, you can see if a classroom isn't orderly, that's going to counteract any challenge, right? So that's in the class, so that you're not going to get any gains. But on top of that, because there's this interaction, if a class is disorderly, it actually drags down the benefits you get from challenge. So it's kind of like multiplying a negative number times positive number here. This isn't a good display for this, but you get my meaning, right? So it drags it down. So challenge doesn't benefit learning if you have a disorderly classroom. On the other hand, if you have an orderly classroom, then you get a boost from your challenge, right? So if you have a challenging classroom that's also orderly, that's where you have the most learning. Okay, this is the same chart, but now I've expanded it to look at students' grades. Okay, if you hold constant the student classroom behavior, the order of the classroom and the degree to which there's monitoring and support in the classroom, more challenging classes actually tend to have lower grades, right? So kids can learn more, but actually get lower grades. And this is what we saw with the double-dose algebra policy, because kids actually did learn more. Classes became more challenging, but they actually became harder. And kids didn't get any more monitoring and support than they did before. Because what ends up mattering for grades is the degree to which teachers are monitoring student behavior. Students always know where they stand. Teachers know where the kids stand. And they're helping them. They're giving them help when they need it. They're not waiting it. When kids need help, they get the help right away. That's what matters for students' grades. And once again, there's an interaction so that if you have kids that are really or teachers that are really monitoring kids, that makes up for the challenge. So you can actually have challenging classes with very high grades, but you have to actually increase the amount that you're monitoring and supporting students. So the classes with the highest grades and the highest gains are the classes where teachers are really monitoring their kids and supporting their kids while asking them to do challenging work. Okay, but if you increase the challenge without increasing the support, you get lower grades. Okay, so just wrap up what needs to happen to improve student achievement. Well, academic demand affects learning only if students are doing the work, which means you need to pay attention to academic behaviors with academic demands. The only problem is actually student behavior gets worse when work gets harder. So if you ask kids to do more work, kids will do things if it's easy in general. We all do. You give us something to do, it's easy, I'll just do it. If it's hard, I don't want to do it. So the more you ask of kids, the less likely they are to do it. So the more challenging your class is, the more problems you're going to have with behavior. So you actually have to pay more attention when you ask kids to do more. And then we also find that student behavior is worse in classrooms with lower incoming skills. So the more that you bring in kids who have not been successful in school into classes with kids who have been successful, the more it's going to drive down the behavior in the class. What does this mean? It means teachers need to model expected academic behavior. So if you're expecting your kids to work harder to handle this more challenging homework, you have to be explicit about how much they have to study, and you have to model that behavior to show them what they need to do to engage in this. If you're going to have more student-centered pedagogy, you have to teach them how to actually engage in those tasks and take control of their own learning. And it also means you need staff who are able to teach to heterogeneous classes, right? If you're going to have high-level classes with kids with low skills, you need to make sure that teachers have the support they need to be able to teach to the heterogeneous classes, right? And you need to make sure you have enough teachers to teach high-level classes if you expect everyone to take them. This is one problem that happened in Chicago. Schools stopped offering as many physics classes and pre-calc classes because teachers needed to teach Algebra 2 and chemistry to everyone, right? They didn't have enough teachers. And then good grades require support to equal demand. So if teacher support doesn't increase with higher rigor, grades fall, failures increase, even if students learn more, which means you got to really monitor kids, keep up with your grades, make sure kids know where they stand, and as soon as a kid stops turning in their work, stops coming to class, seems confused, give them help, because that will keep them from withdrawing. So as I said, increasing rigor requires more than changing the curriculum. It actually requires more attention to professional capacity and school climate, and that's why I say there are costs to increasing rigor. That's it.
Great. I think Elaine and Tony have both done the impossible, which is translate a lot of great information into short presentations. So thank you very much. And we will still use those index cards, write down your questions, because you will have time for question and answers, because I know you've already gotten a lot of information. So don't worry, you will have an opportunity to ask questions. So Greg, in a former life, was a district person. And he's going to talk a little bit about, in Chicago, and he's going to talk a little bit about not only his work now, but about as, and I can drop this or move this down too, talk about how to kind of translate what the research is saying into practice at a district and school level.
So I'm not going to wear my federal hat. I'm going to put my old Chicago hat on. So let me paint the picture back in 2003. And I want to really kind of piggyback off of what Tony and Elaine have talked about and not talk about instruction, but talk about the support side of things. So Arnie becomes CEO around 2001. 2003, the district goes through a planning process around college access and the such. I'm running a foundation, giving away money, happy doing that, not part of the district yet. And this planning process ends up creating a new department called the Department of Post-Secondary Education. Arnie begins to talk about how there's only one metric that will mean anything to him in terms of success of his superintendency. And it's not increasing high school graduation rates, and it's not increasing post-secondary enrollment rates. The only metric in the end that he sees as being essential to his success is post-secondary graduation. But the district of 425,000 students and 650 schools lacks any sort of strategy on the support side of this. It lacks a counseling strategy. It lacks a college and career access strategy. It lacks what a number of us came to view as critical, kind of how do we help students establish a set of disciplines around being successful students, the habits of study and the such. What we also lacked was any sort of data analytic unit that could help us really baseline where we were starting from. So it was one thing to say we've got to get better in terms of getting more kids into post-secondary, but it's another thing to be And if you've heard Arnie talk since he's become secretary, he's stressed the whole importance of data, but also about the transparency of data, the honesty of data, and being straightforward with what's really happening. So we didn't really know what was happening in terms of that day after, the fall after high school graduation. Gates gives the district some money. We set up a data analytic unit inside this new department. Actually, Kelly Sparks, who's sitting in the back of the room, eventually became my right-hand strategist and actually led this unit. And the importance of the unit was to really be able to tell us, with any district, any federal, any private investment for any subgroup of students, how well were we doing on a set of outcome indicators? How well were those kids in CTE doing in terms of not just graduating, but actually enrolling in post-secondary? Because the questions I was getting from Arnie and from the board were, how well do we know that our kids in automobile technology, how well are they doing in relationship to kids in information technology programs? How do we know from one school to the other whether there are greater outputs in terms of enrollment and eventual graduation and the such? But we had no idea of we couldn't answer that until we started using the National Student Clearinghouse database. And the other thing that was going on is that the district had a relationship with the consortium. And the consortium was an agent of the district. And so their researchers had ready access to student-level data. One of the things that I worked on, and Elaine and her colleagues at the consortium worked on, was to build a level of trust between the two institutions. And a trust that, in the end, I had every confidence that they had the district's success as paramount to why they were doing the work. It wasn't a relationship of gotcha. It was a relationship of helping to inform us in the deepest ways, program by program, subgroup by subgroup of students, in terms of how we were doing, again, on that ultimate outcome data point, which we then backed up into college enrollment, into high school graduation, into things like freshmen on track, into indicators around middle schools and the such. What was important was to have a data analytic unit, again, that Kelly led, that would take that information and translate it back out to administrators at the school level, to open up a set of questions in terms of, we're seeing in your school's data such and such. Have you thought about the implications of the fact that? And I'll give you a couple examples. One of the things that the consortium helped us understand, which I came to, as an administrator, to understand, was, in the end, to assume absolutely nothing of what you thought is happening. One of the starkest realizations of that was with our International Baccalaureate program. So kids who are in probably one of the most rigorous competitive programs to get into, 33,000 freshmen entering Chicago public schools every single year. I don't know, maybe 500 of them at the most in IB programs. 4, 5, 6 years of investment by teachers, administrators, counselors in these kids, right? They graduate. Everyone assumes that they're at Harvard and Stanford and WashU down in St. Louis and the such. When we ran the NSC data, wasn't happening. Only 30% of the kids, if I remember correctly, were in the highly selective universities in the country. Some of the kids weren't even in school at all. Some of them were in community colleges. Some of them were in open enrollment institutions. So what this forced us to do was really kind of an analysis of why weren't we getting the outcomes that we were expecting? What are the leaks here? Where is this program falling short of delivering for these kids? So what we were trying to do was use data to inform program practice, down to, again, measuring those ultimate outcomes of post-secondary graduation. eventually the mission of Chicago Public Schools changed from one of graduating all students for college or careers to one of college and career. And that was a huge change for us. About 2 years before I left, the director of our career and technical ed programs resigned, and I went to Arnie immediately and said, I think there's an important step here for the district to take, and that is to merge this work on the college focus with the work on careers. Now, I thought the principal yesterday from Massachusetts made an interesting point, where from a working class community, their mission is solely focused on college and not college and career because of what career in her particular community infers and such. And that really struck me as kind of an important contextual statement to make and really makes sense, and the such. But for the most part, because of so many communities in this country struggle with this kind of two-tiered system at the secondary level of career and technical ed being a step lower than college track and the such, leveling the playing field and getting rid of that stigma that's been perpetuated for decades. Certainly, it was there when I was in high school 40 years ago. Is something that too strongly exists across the country. So, anyways, my big point here is the transparency and being honest about where you're starting from in order to be able to make the real improvements on the support side and to use data to help inform the actual programmatic implementation on an ongoing basis, and to have the frameworks of support in place, which I think are all too often lacking. We didn't, in Chicago, have a framework around counseling. So we went to and adopted the American School Counselor Association framework, which has a set of standards, which has a set of evidence bases based for schools to demonstrate they're actually implementing. It has a huge focus on data. We, for better or for worse, Chicago took on AVID as a way to really drive these habits of study. And we made it a secondary school strategy, not just a high school strategy, so that we could impact as many kids starting in 5th, 6th grade through 8th grade, and then made it an elective class in 8th grade. And we started measuring college enrollment and persistency of those kids in comparison to the kids from their schools, from the district and the such, and how well they were doing. We needed a framework around college access. The thing I think most of us face in doing the college access and career readiness work is it's all good stuff to do, right? It's good to expose kids and put them on college trips. It's good to give them test preparation. It's good to have them take dual credit, early college, all of this. But is there a strategy particularly from a secondary school standpoint going forward in terms of, take financial literacy. How does that break down for a 10-year-old versus a 12-year-old versus a 16-year-old versus an 18-year-old? And is that laid out with a set of indicators along the way to show that kids are making progress in that? How do you approach college selection and match? But it's this intentionality. And so we were looking for data points that would indicate progress of students towards being able to fulfill the college enrollment goal that we had leading to the post-secondary graduation. We also, if any of you are interested afterwards, you can talk to me. We figured out, and actually you're probably from a state that has the capacity to track FAFSA completion by student in real time through your state scholarship entity. We figured out in 2007, actually Kelly figured this out, how we could do it through the Illinois Student Assistance Commission, and the quick data and why certain data points are so important is that nationally only 57% of high school kids fill out the FAFSA. 90% of those kids who fill it out end up in post-secondary within 12 months after they graduate. 43% gap, 90% correlation. Chicago this year will end up probably about 91 or 92% of their seniors having filled out a FAFSA. Now, the caveat here is that just filling out a FAFSA is not the magic bullet that everybody's been looking for in terms of, right? Because it's really about the frameworks that I mentioned earlier around counseling, around habits of study, around using data to inform program practices and such. But there's a huge, huge correlation here, particularly if you're working in heavily low-income districts in terms of the importance of financial aid and getting access to the federal dollars. And if you'd like some more information about that, I'm happy to share it with you afterwards, because it's becoming a fairly big priority for the Department of Ed. And then finally, on career and technical education, what I find as I travel the country is we continue to have many individual programs. Most districts don't have a real strategy. And here in Chicago, career and technical ed, up to a few years ago, was a total mess. Everything had to be reconstructed, from the curriculum to the training of teachers to the credentialing to the connections with business, everything. To the recruitment of students. At one time, the two top high schools in the city were Lynn Bloom and Lane Tech high schools. They were the most competitive high schools for students to get into. And over the last 10 years or so, some of the academic selective enrollment schools have pushed them down to 7th, 8th, 9th, or 10th on the list, right? But there's no reason, and part of the reason that happened was the lack of intentionality on the part of the district to really have maintain a strategy around career and technical education. So it's going to take this city another 5 to 6 years to reverse what the downward trend in career and technical ed and level the playing field between CTE and college. So I'll just conclude by saying that if you have a chance to build a relationship with a partnering higher ed institution and can build a feedback of data loop. I'll end with this story. I went in with Arnie one time to meet with Mayor Daley, my first 10 minutes of fame with the mayor, right? And we're sitting there. I got my 10 PowerPoint slides to show the mayor. In 5 seconds of opening my mouth, the mayor I'm sitting right next to him, he takes my arm and he says, "Greg, I just want you to know I don't believe any data anybody from Chicago Public Schools ever brings to me." Now think about that in terms of the other power brokers that you deal with, in terms of what's going through their head, in terms of the validity of the data of what you're telling them. But I knew that I could come back into the mayor in 6 months because I had this group, I had the consortium, and all I needed to do, because they were using the same data sets I was using for the most part. And we were working off the same surveys, and we were integrating that information. And I knew I could cross out Arnie and my names on the top, and I could put Elaine and Melissa Roderick's name and John Easton's name, and I could take off Chicago Public Schools and put the consortium at the University of Chicago with the same date, with the same slides, and give them to the mayor, and he would accept them. And he did. And from that point on, he proudly got up at the end of every school year and made 3 press conferences. One was on college enrollment, one was on the number of scholarships that our students earned, and the other was on the increase in FAFSA, because he understood FAFSA was related to economic development in this city. If you go down State Street in Chicago, there's something like 80,000 college students who attend institutions up and down Michigan Avenue and State Street. That is not by accident. That's a intentional strategy by this city, powered by the work that we do day in and day out. So I'll leave it at that.
All right, thank you. So this next part of the session, we do want to get you together to kind of talk and process through what you've heard from Tony, Elaine, and Greg. Again, you will have time for questions, I promise. But we're going to I meant to do this at the beginning and I totally forgot. To do kind of a check in the room. Who's here from a school? Okay. A district. Okay, and a state. Okay, so we have a good mix. So what we'd like to do in your table groups, and let's see if I can get this right. Oh, no, I'm good. Thank you. There we go. We're going to start with this first question. Oh, there we go. So what we want to do is in your table groups, and for those of you that aren't at a table, feel free to come on up. Plenty of room in the front. We want you to kind of talk about and process through, again, what you've heard today, and identify some of the top 3 themes that you've heard across presentations. And then, again, implications for your work. And we're going to take a few minutes, and then we'll capture what everyone says here up front. But talk a little bit about it. Tony, Elaine, and Greg will kind of be circulating around the room so they can kind of join your conversations as well. But just take a few minutes, firstly, to kind of think about the three presentations, the early college, the impact or the necessity of monitoring and support to support rigorous coursework, and then what Greg shared about using the research to make decisions around monitoring and support and practice, and then that CTE question too, because we're going to also talk about those as well. So we'll just give you a few minutes in your table groups to talk about this first question, and then we'll move on.
Thanks for the sobering.
Okay, I hate to interrupt the great conversations, but I do want to capture a little bit of what you guys have been talking about. So I need a brave soul to volunteer and share some of the themes that they discussed at their table that they saw across presentations. Anyone? I like to volunteer people, so sometimes it's good to volunteer yourself. Okay. Themes. Okay.
Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. At our particular table, we were sharing some themes that were common across for all of us, and that we all experienced some shock when we realized that rigor alone was not the magic bullet to turning around instruction. Elaine came in and dropped a bomb on all of us when she said that not only do you have to look at rigor, but there are other supports that go with it. And once you lay down the supports, it was clearly obvious that there was more work to be done. So I kind of said that, some of my summer just went by, that there was an opportunity to take some of this back and share it with the team. But equally as alarming to me and my colleagues at the table was the fact that here at a conference, we hear that rigor alone is not the issue, because we realized that our instruction needed a shot, needed to be on steroids. So we knew that we needed to increase our rigor, but we also have to increase the cognitive or the abilities of the classroom teacher, because not only does that teacher need to be able to impart that knowledge in a manner where students receive it, but they need to also be able to impart it to students who are on the upper level as well as to those students that are on the lower level, because if those students don't get it, we all know if I don't understand what you're doing, step 2 is for me to tear your classroom up. So we understand that as well. So it was enlightening, but at the same time, it was shocking, and we realized that this work can be done. And I'm thankful for the fact that so much here in Chicago, you all are sharing so much of your past practices, because in Michigan, we don't have to go and reinvent the wheel, that we can literally reach out to the Elaines and the Gregs and get that good information that we can take back and make ready use of, because the data and the path taken by you all creates a positive path for us to take. So for that, I'm very grateful. This young lady wanted to say something.
Anyone else that has a theme that kind of emerged at your table?
I have a question, actually. Can I ask a question? Yeah. In discussing the themes, we really actually have a big question. It was pretty alarming and enlightening to see the data after showing that clearly rigor alone doesn't work. But we want to know then what did work. I mean, it's great to see that, and we know that we can't just say rigor, even though our classrooms and our students aren't wanting to come to school or they're not behaving, which is obviously why a lot of our schools are in the position that we are in. Then what is working? We were really, really looking forward to coming here to find that out, because as a guidance counselor, I can tell you, I know that clearly encouraging and helping and literally holding the students' hands to fill out the FAFSA did make a tremendous difference in the number of students that went on to college. But I want to know how I can get more students to be prepared for college. And if rigor alone doesn't work, what is it that's going to work? What are some of the strategies that actually would help us to get more students to college and be successful when they're in college?
So which I didn't complete the story. So Chicago's college enrollment rate in 2004, with the class of 2004, was 43.5%. With the class of 2010, it's now up to 55.5%. So it's gone up 12 percentage points. For Chicago, that means there are 3,000 more students in college from the class of 04. From the class of 010 over the class of 04. So your question is, all of what happened? When we started this work, Arnie gave me $16 a kid to do the work. He gave me $4 million, but I had 250,000 kids between 6th and 12th grade. I quickly thought to myself, I wonder how many other resources are coming into this city from the federal level, from the state level, that that have some sort of loose label around college access. So I quickly tabulated Gear Up and TRIO grants going to local universities and nonprofits. $27 million a year. 7 times what I had from the district. Now, I don't know if those proportions would be the same in your communities, but there was, no matter how good, if I got to 80% college enrollment rate, I wasn't going to get $27 million from Chicago Public Schools, but I had $27 million already active in the district, but it was all, loose because it wasn't being coordinated. The counselors at the school, this school had 10 kids from Loyola University in their Upward Bound program, and it had, maybe it was a Gear Up school, maybe it wasn't, but that was only for 2 cohorts of kids. So that's my point around having these frameworks in place, so that we drove counselors to start thinking about strategically how they went about doing their work. And obviously there's always 1,500 more things to do at the end of every day, right? There's always 50 more phone calls to make. There's always, that sort of thing. But unless you prioritize it and organize it, it continues just to be scattered. And so what we started to look for were like indicators along the line, going back to my example of financial literacy. If you take each career exposure or exploration, if you take college exploration and such. So what does that mean for, for an 8th grader? What does it mean for a 9th grader, and so on? I was in Long Beach, California, a couple months ago with Arnie, and so they've got a wonderful working relationship between the 4-year institution, the community college, and the school system. The president of the community college calls every single freshman in high school and says, just want to introduce myself. I know you're a few years away from graduating high school, but I'm looking forward to you attending Long Beach Community College, blah, blah, blah. Every sophomore gets a call from the 4-year college president to say, oh, I know you're going to start, exploring possibilities after you graduate high school. I really want you to consider coming to Long Beach State University, blah, 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 blah. So you have a superintendent working with 2 college presidents who have outlined with their counseling staff a set of very specific, nothing really dramatic, nothing no one has ever thought of before. It's just a matter of doing it, and being very intentional about how you go about doing it. And so, one of the messages we always hear, and we heard it yesterday and heard it today too, is what gets measured gets done, sort of thing. And so here, I just use FAFSA. FAFSA now it's not an accountability measure for Chicago public school principals. It's not an accountability measure in a formal way for counselors. But if there's any metric in terms of college access that people in this city are proud of, it's this year the competition amongst principals was who could get to 100% first. The only thing that we did when I was here was I asked Arnie for 6 weeks in a row from mid-February to the end of March to send out an email, because Kelly and her staff were measuring FAFSA completion increases from week to week. So we knew which of 120 high schools, which were the top 10 who had the largest percentage increase. So all Arnie would do, we would send him the information. He'd send out an email to all the principals, and every Wednesday they would get this email. Now, what correspondence does a principal get from the superintendent on a weekly basis, on any subject? Well, without him having to say anything, it quickly dawned on not only principals, but also mid-level, their supervisors, oh, this is a metric that the superintendent's really tracking. Maybe it's something we should pay attention to, And so it became kind of this kind of pride of honor to be the first school on the north side, the first school on the south side, the first small school, the school or whatever. And it created this kind of competition because it was an easy metric to understand, and it was and the district office in this case was pushing the information back out to the school. The school didn't really have to do anything other than act on the information, and we were giving student level FAFSA filing information back to the counselor. So that 8:15 PA announcement about, hey, there's a FAFSA workshop tonight, make sure you come if you haven't done it, you don't do that anymore because you know the 36 kids who haven't filled it out. And the counselor can use his or her time to track those kids down, track their parents down. It becomes much more efficient in doing that particular step in terms of this whole college access goal that you have. So part of it is like, how do we use information and push it down to the school level in real time? And sometimes we're sitting on information that if we just twisted and turned it a little bit and reformulate it a little bit differently, can be very powerful for school level personnel. So.
Yeah, I think we both want to respond to that question really quickly, if it's all right. And Elaine?
Well, I'm not going to be quick. So if you're going to be quick, go ahead.
Okay, I will be quick. So we talk a lot about balancing high rigor and high support. So an environment that has high support and low rigor is one that feels really good to kids, but they aren't doing the right work. An environment that has high rigor and low support is a place that teachers and students are really frustrated. So we talk a lot about the balance between high rigor and high support and what that environment looks like, and try to help our teams of teachers benchmark against one another. What are the strategies for wraparound student support? Wraparound student support so that they both learn how to persist with their current coursework and develop the skills they need to persist once they move into the completion of a four-year degree beyond their school.
Okay, so I give you the bad news. The good news, besides what Greg just told you about college, is that, I showed you graduation rates were at like 50% back in the 90s. They're now at 69%, and ACT scores have gone up at the same time. Okay, so more kids are actually graduating, and they're getting better test scores. So there's something great going on. We've been looking at why kids do well in classes and why kids fail, and the biggest thing it comes down to is monitoring. And it gets back to Greg and having the data where you're actually looking at the data and how kids are, and you're acting on real data in real time. So if you look at, and you can think about this at the classroom level, what individual teachers are doing, because that makes a big difference. Like, are teachers keeping up with their grades? Do kids actually know where they stand so they know what grade they're getting and they realize that they need help? And then are the teachers reaching out to the kids? Kids don't come on their own for help, right? But teachers who are really paying attention to where kids are will go and make them get the help, right? You can't just say, come to my class. You have to force them to come get the help they need, whether that's making sure they turn in their homework, come to class, whatever. But at the school level, the district not only has been great about, and under Greg's watch has been bringing all this great information to schools about college enrollment and FAFSA completion, which I think has really helped for kids in the upper grades, 11th and 12th grade. But they've also over the last 5 years or 6 years started giving schools information on their 9th graders, so that before kids, before the school year even starts, schools get a student-by-student list. They know the kids that are at risk of not doing well in their 9th grade classes, and then immediately, week by week, that gets updated based on students' attendance, based on their grades, their midterm grades, their semester grades, so that kids get flagged if their attendance drops or if they get a D or an F in their classes. Now, how schools use this is very variable, but some schools have really been on top of this data. And so they'll have teams of teachers getting together, looking at the kids, kids, and sharing information, saying, why is this student failing this class but not failing this class? And then the teacher who knows the child can say, this is what the student needs, right? This is how you connect. Or seeing that the child is failing across all their classes, teachers can come up with strategies so that the child is hearing the same information across all their classes. Having people who are monitoring student attendance and student grades. I know it's some schools, they see a student gets an F in their midterm grade, they immediately call a conference with the teacher, the student, and the parent to figure out why is the student failing, right? And then come up with a plan to get them to be able to pass that class. Really paying attention to that data and reaching the kids who need it. Can I go on for a second? And there's a lot of times people just throw a solution at a problem, and that tends not to work. So a kid is failing, put them in tutoring. But a lot of kids are failing because they're not doing their homework, right? So putting them in tutoring doesn't help them unless the tutor knows what their homework is and is helping them with their homework and making sure that they're getting that done. Figuring out what the problem is. Another thing that schools can do is think about the way that teaching staff is organized to support teachers so that they actually are helping each other. There's some schools that are, have figured out, for example, how to use support staff so that teachers who are we know that classes with many kids coming in with weak skills tend to have more behavioral problems, and that makes it hard to have high-quality instruction in the classes. Some schools really use their support staff to help the teachers in the classrooms, as like an assistant teacher or a co-teacher who can help support kids while one teacher is teaching, the other teacher can go and help them and support them, make calls home to parents, and really work as a team. Or there'll be teachers who teach the same class, English 1, say, that will help each other. They'll teach the same thing at the same time, and they'll actually mix students. They'll work with each other's students, and they'll figure out how to work together as a team. And another thing is to really think about the organization of instruction. So the double-dose policy, double-dose algebra policy, really worked for improving students' test scores, really didn't work for improving pass rates. But if we think about why it worked and why it didn't work, we can figure out how to address the issues. So we saw that actually kids with above average skills were more likely to fail with the policy because they were now in classes with only students with above average skills. Classes got harder. Kids who were likely to be in the average kids are now likely to be at the bottom of their class. What does that say? It doesn't matter what your skills are in an absolute level. It's where you are relative to your classroom peers, right? So we need to not just assume, a student has average skills, they're going to do okay, but look where they are given the type of class that they're in. And then if they're struggling, even if they have those high skills, they still need that support, right? Don't just assume they're doing well because of where they are. And then for, if a class has mostly low-skilled kids, make sure the teachers have the support they need to make sure that they can actually do high-quality instruction, because they're going to have to spend a lot more time getting kids engaged in learning, reaching out to parents, getting them involved, and really thinking about how to structure the class so that kids don't withdraw. Okay.
Other questions?
So my question is for Greg, but all three can answer. So within the last 2-3 years or so, we've had the downturn in the economy with families losing homes. So there is a greater percentage of transient and homeless students. So what does the data say, and what has the districts done to help prepare, catch, support this group of students? Because I'm assuming, and I may be wrong, that the data is showing for those who have a home and they have, the income to complete the FAFSA form and all that stuff. So what are you doing for the transient homeless students, and then perhaps those ELL students whose native language isn't English, to fill out the FAFSA form in the first place?
So I'm not sure I can fully answer your question, but one of the things that we realized was that we needed to support counselors by trying to get more hands on deck, and that a lot of this work is in the trenches, and it is family by family. So I started looking at federal funding streams and asking questions like, well, why couldn't we use Perkins funds to hire not just supplant counselors, but to supplement the work they're doing by bringing on college graduates that could serve as college and career counselors, if you will, advisors, and they kind of take on different names across the country. In fact, North Carolina founded the National College Advising Corps, which is now in about 15 states, taking college grads, putting them in schools, on counseling teams, and the such. Some of it's being funded by AmeriCorps dollars from the federal level. We took Gear Up money here in Chicago and hired 26 full-time college coaches, advisors, sort of thing. So part of it is like, how do we think about resources that are currently flowing in, possibly in a slightly different way? The young people we tended to hire were, in predominantly Latino schools, was someone who was from that community, who could identify with the challenges and the such. It doesn't get to your, homeless kid student challenge and the such. But the point is, how can we? Because so many of the family situations are not, cookie cutter standardized family structures, is how do you build in and that individual support and the such. So.
Other questions?
I was just wondering if anyone on the panel has knowledge of some of these firms that will offer technical assistance in the way of either paper or electronic portfolios so that students can manage their own progress through this process. Does it work? Is it a money sucker, or do you know?
I think there probably are lots of examples of that. In North Carolina, because of the Race to the Top funds, we are accelerating the development of the cloud computing, and so the repository for that information is going to be readily available everywhere. And we're fortunate because we have a history of broadband over the last 5 years that has been a very, very strong initiative. But one example that occurs to me to suggest that you might want to look is the New Tech Network does an amazing job of creating an environment for digital portfolios as well as for a collaborative approach to student grading, whereby the school will say, we have these learning outcomes. Every student should not just have the course-taking patterns to be college ready, but let's say we're going to emphasize effective oral and written communications and collaborative teamwork. However we would agree to it, they have a way of constituting grading that is very, very exciting. So the digital portfolio and the evidence is there, along with this very exciting environment around grading. And I talked to John, it looks like he may have left, from Michigan, and he was talking about how they are beginning to accelerate the development of new tech schools in that state. And I know Indiana and their governor is doing some very aggressive work there as well.
I'll just quickly add that a lot of states have taken their college access and completion grant money, which is from, which flows to all states, and they've built websites that many times are secondary school, so they're starting with career exploration with the idea that students can build their own electronic portfolio over time. What I find is from these tools exist many times. They might not be the most ideal, but there's a foundation to them. It's a matter of getting teachers and having the procedures, the structure in place to allow students to use them. And one of the things we try to do here in Chicago was by grade level, I worked with the counselors to say, okay, for a sixth grader, there's 200 different activities on this tool, the tool that Illinois has available. What are the 6 things that we absolutely want sixth graders to do? And what are the 7 things we want seventh graders to do, or the 5 things we want eighth graders to do, just as a way to, kind of get, demonstrate the importance of it and hopefully drive kids and to it and try to build it into the structure of the school day somewhere. So.
Well, we're students of other states, and so we spend a lot of time going to other states and observing schools that are getting very, very strong results, and looking at our own learnings with our partners in the state and other states that we visit. I think there's a very, very clear pattern, and that is being really clear to implement the work in a very comprehensive and consistent way. That as educators, we resist this sort of franchise mentality. We have a tendency to want to try this thing on and that thing on and layer on this program and layer on that program, and those things tend to lead to mission drift, an erosion of quality. So earlier in my presentation, I went very quickly through design principles. For us, there is a large volume of work behind those design principles, the rubrics, evidences, and indicators, where we spend an enormous amount of time with our teachers and administrators going through what is the evidence that you are delivering on that design principle consistently. And sometimes we get a principal in the network that just resists the idea, and they want to be John Wayne, they want to do it all their own way. And inevitably, their results start to decline because ego gets in the way of what is really supported by the evidence. So I think it's that clarity and consistency and fidelity to what works.